Well, Gorky, as you all know, is from Senegal, and we had a commitment from a young man on his team named Coleman. Went to watch him play. I was with Walter McCarty, and I said, well, I'm not sure about this kid, whether he's our type of basketball player. He didn't work really, really hard at the time, and I said, I really like the center. Do you know anything about him? And we asked Rob, the coach, about him. I said, is he open? He said, yes, he's open. I said, like him. I said, he's just thin, but he's not like most of the kids I've seen from Africa. He's got really a good finesse game. So we started recruiting him. And when I first met Gorky, it was in December, and he spoke very little English. And then come February, he spoke really good English. And I marveled at that because I was going to be the Puerto Rican national coach, and I subscribed to learn how to speak Spanish, got all the tapes, and I marveled at it as I was doing 2 hours a day trying to learn to speak Spanish, how well Gorky did, because I couldn't get to his level, needless to say. So it's Rosetta Stone did not do me well compared to Gorky. No. We saw him. He was at Huntington Prep when I first saw him play. Huntington Prep is in West Virginia. We worked on it today. We shot the ball great today, and what we did was we worked on a 5-foot shot, a 6-foot shot, a 7-foot shot. We worked our way out, and then we started scrimmaging, and we shot the ball great today. We really did. I don't think it'll be a major problem. It won't be for Kentucky because they shoot a lot of layups and dunks. So it usually that's not a big problem for them. It could be a problem for us. But you got to work inside out. And well, look, we're just so excited to be here in terms of what we had to go through to get here. We played 4 great Big East teams to get to the championship. And then we really played 4 outstanding teams in a tournament. Extremely well-coached teams. You know, you're talking about Michigan State and Florida and Davidson and who am I leaving out? New Mexico was extremely well-coached. New Mexico could be here in place of us. I mean, they were great. So we had to beat 4 extremely well-coached teams to get here. The competition was great, and now we're going to play the best team in the country. So we're excited about that.
Len?
Good afternoon, Len. Len had us in the New York Post 150-1 to win the Big East tournament. That's how much respect he had for the University of Louisville. Well, you know, people always ask about the best rivalry, and the purists will say it's North Carolina-Duke because they're in the same league. But I have a different perspective. You know, you all watched Glory Road, and you saw the depiction of the racial lines. Well, it all started with the racial lines in Louisville, Kentucky. We're the minority university. They're the university of the privileged, so to speak. And it started in the racial lines, and that's where the rivalry really started. And then it was thrown out the window when Tubby Smith became the first African-American coach, and you didn't think of it. The hatred wasn't based on race any longer. That was over. And I did everything humanly possible to recruit Louisville to end those lines because I didn't like it. Now the lines are no longer racially motivated. It's just pure hatred. You know, really, you don't have to motivate your team when you're 2 games away from a championship game. The motivation's thrown out the window. You had to motivate in the first game, the second game, the third game, and then the motivation's really out the window. It's more about preparing your team for what you're about to face, a great basketball team in the University of Florida. And for 32 minutes, Florida had the major edge in that game. And then they didn't make another 3, and we had to change, they had to change, we had to change, they had to change, and we were lucky enough to win it at the end. But they definitely outplayed us in that basketball game, and we were lucky enough to win the game. And now you're playing the University of Kentucky. We played them early in the year. They were a young team. We were a team that was banged up and injured, and Shane Bohannon didn't play too much. But they are, I don't know what they're better at, offense or defense. And that's the greatest compliment you can give a basketball team. So you don't need motivation now. You're in the Superdome playing for the national championship or 1 game away from the national championship.
Bob?
You know, I was as much at I had as much to do with that 31-point loss as the players. I got disgusted with the way they were playing, with the way Peyton was playing, Gorky was playing. They both were in foul trouble. I pulled them out. I went with the bench. And you know from covering the NBA for all those years, it's the third or fourth game on a 5-game road trip. You're not playing well. You're getting blown out. Let's go. Let's get this game over with. It's not our night. And it was their night. And I never really paid too much attention to where everybody else was just beside themselves. We're not any good and so on. And I just said it was just one game. Don't worry about it. Let's get on to the next game. Let's quit now and go home with the money. A gambler's money has no home, Jerry. You got to leave with it. Now, you know, people say that, Jerry, but there's they've been here 2 years in a row. Very few times you get to a Final Four. It's very difficult to get here. So I don't believe in that. This is our chance to win a championship. And we've got everything to lose, just like they do. And because it's not easy to get here. You can ask, there are a lot of great coaches that have never had the opportunities with some outstanding teams to get to a Final Four. Now, you know, for us, it's more the unexpected. You know, in 96 and 97 and 93, we thought if we played well, we would have a chance to get to a Final Four, if we played well. But we never expected it. In 96, we did. So for us, 2005 and 87, and now we didn't expect it. Suddenly, you're here, and you're playing Kentucky, and it's like a flashback. You know, what happened the last 2 weeks? How did we get here? We went through the Big East. We won the Big East. We're cutting down the nets. We're in Portland. We're in Phoenix. We never went back home. We're cutting down the nets, and suddenly we're playing Kentucky. Where did the year go? And I think that speaks to the senility I have at this point in my life. No, I don't. You know, every recruit's different. You know, Russ Smith was a 7th grader, 8th grader when he was at my camp, and he was the MVP, and I never ever considered recruiting him. And when I went to watch him play, we were looking at J.J. Moore. I never considered recruiting him, and Ralph Willard was sitting right here next to me, and he kept hitting me and said, that's the guy we should go after. And I said, Russ Smith. I knew his dad when he was Russ's age. I said, he's 5'8". And he said, no, Rick, he was 5'8" in 8th grade. He's 6 foot now. I said, no, he's not, Ralph. And I called Russ over. Come over here, Russ. He gave me a big hug, and I stood next to him. I said, yeah, Ralph, you're right. He said, we need to recruit him. I said, Ralph, we're not recruiting Russ Smith. His father's crazy. I'm not recruiting him. And so I watched him play a little bit more. I said, Ralph, he said, you're recruiting him. I said, I'm not recruiting him, Ralph. And finally, I said, you're right, Ralph. We should take him. And and I said to Stevie Mass, who also was the Nick Ball boy when Russ Sr. was Russ's age, he said, Coach, we're not taking Russ, are we? And I said, yeah, we're taking him. And I said, call Russ Sr. and get him in for a visit. And it was the easiest recruit of all time. We got Russ Sr. and him in, and signed the papers, and that was it. And then Gorky was a different story. So, and then, of course, Peyton Seaver was a McDonald's All-American. Shane Bohannon was a McDonald's All-American. And Wayne is not playing right now, I'd be honest with you. He is a McDonald's All-American, but he's coming off double shoulder surgery, and he's just starting to come around now. So it's a mix of different guys. No, I think most teams are like that. Kentucky's is not the norm. Most teams are a mix, you know, whether it's Michigan State or Ohio State or, you know, Kansas probably doesn't even have a McDonald's All-American, but, you know, most teams are like that, a mix of different guys. Well, Alan, I've never listened to you when I was there. I've never read the newspapers when I was in town. I don't read the newspapers in Louisville, and I don't. So all we can do is tell you the truth. I'm as close to John Calipari as I am to Bill Self and Thad Matta. But they don't coach at Louisville and Kentucky, so you're not going to write or listen about it. When John Calipari was a 17-year-old, 16-year-old at five-star camp, I knew him really well as a camper. Then when he became a counselor from Clarion State, I believe, I knew him really well and thought really highly of him as a young teacher in the game. And not until Memphis did our paths really cross. Now, I was on the committee to pick him as the coach, but not until Memphis did a competitiveness become part of our lives, because Memphis and Louisville were chief competitors. And then at Kentucky now, it's the same thing. But it's the truth. John and I have the same relationship that I have with Thad and I have with Bill Self. We're cordial. If we were at the Marriott in in Las Vegas and we were recruiting, we'd have lunch together, have a beer together, and that's our relationship. It's not the relationship I have with Billy Donovan or Herb Sendek or Ralph Willard or Kevin Willard or Mick Cronin or Marvin Menzies or Reggie Theus or any of those guys who work for me. Those are my inner circle. His inner circle are Bruiser Flint and the coach of UMass now, a young man who's did a great job this year. That's what it's all about. So there's no animosity. It's just we're competitors and we want to win and we want to beat each other out for recruits. And that's the truth. Now you can write whatever else you want to write, but that's the truth. The truth speaks for itself. You know, I really mean this, and I say this in a very humble way. As a grandfather now, you know, you see your grandkids and you do everything humanly possible. You make a fool of yourself dancing to just get a smile on their face. My granddaughter's, my wife's looking at me as I'm going through all these gyrations, trying to get her to smile. And with the players right now, we live vicariously through them. To see Peyton Siva so happy, to see Swapshire going out so happy, Chris Smith, we just live through them as you would a grandparent. So I'm having a time of my life watching them achieve this. Last year's team I thought could possibly achieve this. We had a terrific run, great team. And then up 4 with 8 minutes to go, young man breaks his leg. No different than as soon as that Carolina could say all they want. For all of us who know the game of basketball, once that young point guard went down, they're not the same Carolina. They're still very good, but they're not the same Carolina. And when Preston Knowles went down for us last year, we're not the same Louisville. So that's part of the game. So for me, it's sort of last year and this year have been 1987 for me. Just been a great time, great time. I feel like Peyton Siva's Billy the Kid. You know, he's just like that as a person, except from a different background. And, you know, Gorky Zhang's much better than Jacek Duda, but so will you. You know. Jacek, you'll forgive me when I see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, everybody.